Good evening. This is a special video for January 12th, 2012, and it's discussing the winter pattern, and I've decided to make this public. That way it can reach as many people as possible. And we're going to start tonight, of course, with the stratospheric warming. Why? Because this has been a key part to my winter forecast, that eventually major stratospheric warming would take place. That warming would start to build down towards the lower portions of the troposphere and change our weather pattern. Well, that's happening, but not the way I expected. Now, to be fair, I want to give a hat tip to Dave Tolarius at wxrisk.com, one of the meteorologists who I've always respected. He's very, very good at what he does with long-range forecasts, especially for South America and so on and so forth. And as a meteorologist, I think it's always important to give credit and acknowledgement to other meteorologists, like Larry Cosgrove, for example, and other individuals in the field who I feel do an excellent job at what they do with their forecasting. And it's important to read those other forecasts because sometimes you might miss something that another person doesn't. So I think Dave did an excellent job on his Facebook page, which you should be able to find on WX Risk. If you type that into Facebook, you'll be able to find his discussion that he also has made public, I believe this afternoon or late in the morning, which also does an excellent job explaining why he thinks that the winter forecast is also in a lot of trouble. But let me break it down and explain to you why there's a lot of this concern and what's happening. So yes, the stratospheric warming idea did pan out. What didn't pan out was the way that the ridge and trough complexes were working out. You see, here we are in the 7 to 10 day forecast. This is the European model guidance and the GFS model guidance. And the key factor here is this ridge. Now, when I originally saw this starting to set up, I got really happy because I was thinking, okay, this ridge is going to build around Alaska. It'll power up through towards Greenland, and we'll start to get our connection. We'll get a negative NAO pattern and an Arctic oscillation, negative Arctic oscillation, and we'll start to see a very active and very interesting winter weather pattern. The problem here, and again, I think Dave does an excellent job of explaining this, is that this ridge is not moving in the proper position that you'd want it if you're looking for a major cold outbreak, major winter storm outbreak for the East Coast, because this ridge is retrograding and moving towards portions of Asia. Now, I do have my concerns with this forecast, and the reason why is because you have a lot of ridge axes here, you have a lot of building heights over the Arctic, and something's got to give. Well, what looks like the model guidance is starting to point out here is that instead of producing a powerful Arctic oscillation dropping down towards southeast Canada, it's going to split. And you're going to get one upper level low around the the Gulf of Alaska and a weaker one around southeast Canada. That's going to lead to a very deep trough in the west, a southeast ridge, and that's going to keep the cold air bottled up. That's the basic premise. However, there is one thing that we're going to have to keep an eye on, and that is this ridge on the European model guidance. You see, the GFS is relatively flat, and this is what you call a positive NAO. I mean, there's no blocking here. Storms just come and go as they please. And really, there's nothing there to slow down the weather pattern. You have a ridge over portions of western Alaska. So yes, it does get a little bit colder, but it's a transient weather pattern. This ridge axis here does give me a little bit of pause. I'm not sure whether this is correct. I have my doubts that this idea here is correct. But if you're starting to get a ridge building through Greenland, you should see the pattern slow down and some more interesting weather patterns developing. Perhaps not what I was expecting or what other meteorologists were expecting for the second half of the winter, but clearly something a little bit more active than what we've been dealing with. But the main problem here with this entire weather pattern, once again, is this ridge. because this ridge building in this location in Asia, which is just to the north of Japan, eventually leads to a negative PNA pattern, which is not good if you're looking for any type of winter storm activity. So moving forward, I just want to bring up the GFS guidance here, and here we are today. As we move forward over the next few days, look at where our ridge builds. It's building very, very impressively around the Aleutian Islands. You're getting a deep trough over the west coast, which is not what you want to see if you're looking for a pattern development for winter storms. Moving forward, you can see exactly what the GFS is trying to do here and why this ridge being in this position and breaking off and heading towards portions of Japan and portions of China is not good for the East Coast if you're looking for winter storms. And the reason why is quite clear. This ridge is building, yes, it's driving Arctic air, but it's driving it south towards the plains and towards the Pacific Northwest. There is no blocking on the GFS to support a slower weather pattern as in a storm track further to the south for the northern Mid-Atlantic. In other words, this is not a winter storm weather pattern. Yes, there's high latitude blocking. Yes, the stratospheric warming is starting to influence the 500 millibar pattern, but not in the way that we want it if we're looking for a major winter storm. So at this point, this forecast is looking completely ugly. And as we move forward towards the next 10 days and we end up towards day 10, you can see what happens is that our ridge starts to weaken here, but the results are pretty much done. You get a deep upper level low around the Gulf of Alaska, and you end up with the same type of weather pattern that we saw in November, if this ridge axis is correct. And a lot of models are suggesting that it will be. And so as a result, what you end up with is your one chance to see a winter pattern evolve completely collapse and disintegrate, because the stratospheric warming did occur, but it led to a ridge trough axis that just was not supportive of winter storm development. When we take a look at the European model guidance, again, I want to point out that towards day 10 on the European model guidance, we see heights starting to build around Greenland, and we see an upper level low here trying to get itself situated around the Hudson Bay. But even then, you have all these disturbances moving into the west coast, and what do you end up with? You end up with a ridge around the Mississippi River Valley. Clearly not supportive for winter storms. Yes, it gets colder, and yes, there is a very impressive thermal gradient over the Great Lakes in New England, but you cannot sustain a cold weather pattern with this type of setup, and it's just basically not a favorable weather pattern like we were hoping and like I was hoping for winter storms. It just isn't. Now, could things change? Yes, they could. But right now, I just don't. I don't see it. I would love to say I could see it, but when my stratospheric warming idea started to unfold, the pattern that we're seeing now with this ridge, and again, Dave Talarius picked this out first. He did an excellent job with his discussion today. I see exactly what he's seeing. It's just not supportive. So we have to bite the bullet. It looks like the winter weather pattern, the winter pattern I've been forecasting, is not going to unfold. It just isn't at this point. Could we see a period of winter storms developing? Sure, I could see that in February, but it's not going to be the way I envisioned it, and so I don't think I should take credit for it, quite frankly. Talking about winter weather, we do have an Arctic cold front on the way. I do want to touch on this very quickly. Again, we're pretty warm here over the northern Mid-Atlantic. Temperatures are in the mid-30s to mid-40s as we have winds coming off of the Atlantic Ocean. Clearly no threat for rain, or should I say snow. But take a look over the Ohio River Valley. You can see temperatures falling from the lower 40s into the lower 30s and into the upper teens. In fact, as we move further west into Indiana, you can clearly see we're in the mid-teens. Clearly we have an Arctic cold front. And this is going to be something to keep an eye on, because we have a very impressive thermal gradient setting up over the Ohio River Valley that is progressing to the east. And at 925 millibars, which is a little bit above the surface, you can see this thermal gradient even more impressive And so, as you can clearly see, we have a pretty strong Arctic cold front approaching the northern Mid-Atlantic for tomorrow morning. Now, one thing I'm concerned about is that we do have quite a bit of instability, especially low-level instability, ahead of this Arctic cold front. We can see that developing over portions of western Pennsylvania, down through West Virginia and Virginia. And as this cold front is approaching from the west tomorrow morning, I would not be surprised if we have some rather interesting weather for your morning rush hour, possibly even a few thunderstorms because of this instability and the tight thermal gradient. And when I say thunderstorms, I don't mean severe thunderstorms, but I would not be surprised if a few locations get a thunder shower with rain changing over to snow and some slick conditions. And you can see that on the radar. You can see we have some pretty impressive pockets of convection trying to develop here ahead of this Arctic cold front that I think are going to move towards the Philadelphia and New York City metropolitan area for tomorrow morning, making for some rough conditions for your travel, for your morning travel. Now, when we take a look at the water vapor, I just kind of want to point this out. Look at the disturbance associated with this Arctic cold front. What I'm expecting is very strong PVA to move over the northern Mid-Atlantic tomorrow, along with the strong thermal gradient in place, and also the strong uplift from the instability in the atmosphere. I could not rule out perhaps a line of showers, possibly even some thunder showers, changing over and mixing with sleet and snow as this Arctic cold front moves through. So don't be caught by surprise if that should happen. And then when we take a look at the NAM model guidance for tomorrow morning, this is going to get pretty ugly. Here we are this evening. We're pretty dry. We're warm. The Arctic cold front starts to approach by tomorrow morning, let's say about 8 a.m. That Arctic cold front has gone through. Temperatures start to crash. Now, again, we're seeing some pockets of showers and possibly a few isolated elevated thunderstorms here developing. But look at the 850 millibar temperatures and look at the surface temperatures. They are crashing and crashing fast. And you're also seeing a rapid pickup in your winds, anywhere from 15 to 25 knots. You combine that with temperatures crashing tomorrow afternoon. By 2 p.m. tomorrow afternoon, you'll have temperatures falling near freezing. The precipitation's gone, but you're dealing with very windy conditions, anywhere from 15 to 25 knots, gusting over 40 knots, which roughly comes out to gusting over 40 miles per hour, 45 miles per hour. So look for your temperatures to be crashing through the 20s and 30s, which means that any type of wet pavement on the roadways might actually become a little bit of black ice and could be more of a travel hazard for you as you head home tomorrow afternoon. But one thing's for sure, be sure to pack and be sure to be prepared for much colder conditions than what you left in the morning, because by the evening we'll be talking about temperatures in the 20s and lower 30s and continuing to fall towards the teens. So Arctic air is on the way, but I don't see any sign whatsoever for any type of major winter storm. I can't rule out snow, but clearly at this point things are not looking good. It's in the third quarter, we're down by 14, and our QB is on the sideline with a broken arm. That's where we're at right now. So that is your forecast discussion for tonight. Thank you for trusting in NYNJPA Weather for your weather information. Again, I'm your meteorologist, Stephen DiMartino. Have a wonderful evening. Stay safe out there.